Well, it's finally come and gone, folks. Netflix's Avatar The Last Airbender has arrived to thunderous confusion, mostly. I've watched the show twice already, and before finishing the script, I'll have watched it a third time. Some say, hey, it's pretty good, and some say, hey, it's pretty good for what I was expecting. Others say it's exactly what they were expecting, and then frown animatedly at you, and then others still will act like the show killed their childhood dog. And I welcome all these opinions. As a fan of the original show and media in general, I think it's important for everyone to form their own views. And I've formed my own. If this is the first time you're finding my channel, I like Avatar. I watch it a lot. I make videos on it a lot. Everything within this video will be my thoughts, and my thoughts alone. And just as I welcome you to have your own opinion, I hope you can respect mine. There's a lot to this show. Some good, some bad, some ugly. Just like my original Overanalyzing Avatar series, I want to talk about a wide range of topics about this show. But this won't be in my classic Overanalyzing Avatar style. This will be much more of a review than those style videos. I won't be stopping to say, hey, check out this Easter egg in the background that shows up for 1 second like my other videos, or commenting on some blink and you miss it continuity errors. This will be more talking about the show's successes and failures. And I know there's this secret want in the heart of all original show hardcore Avatar The Last Airbender fans, one they probably won't tell you about. They want to protect this show. They want people to see this and think, oh wow, that was really good. I should check out the cartoon. I have this want as well, trust me. It's my first instinct to dismiss a lot of my criticisms and say, hey, the show was pretty good. But that's not how I do things on this channel. I'm not saying any feelings you have on the live action being a fan of the OG show are invalid. If this is your new favorite show, you think it's better than the original, more power to you. I just figured there's some people out there like me that have the same feeling that I do. I hope over the years I've garnered enough goodwill for you to already know that I'm going to try to be as fair to the show as I can be. When something is good, I'll tell you I think it's good. When something is bad, you'll hear about that too. That part stays, no matter the format or the subject of the video. So let's start part 1 of this YouTube series, where I talk about the entire show broadly, not focusing on any single episode, and see what I think. I'll be doing more reviews for each individual episode after this one is done, if my plans work out, but this review will be for the entire show, and will cover every single spoiler there is. You've been warned. My philosophy going into the script is, if you're gonna interact with this show, you need to be past why. Why did they even make it? Why, when the first show will obviously never be topped by a remaking? Why? You have to be past that. They made the show. They put $600 trillion into it. It's out there. It's done. You gotta be past why if you're really gonna have a look at this. But also, it is Avatar The Last Airbender. It's the same IP. So yes, I'm going to be comparing it to the original in some parts. Looking at it as if it's its own thing doesn't really make any sense to me. This is Avatar The Last Airbender, and there's already one of those. So I think comparison isn't just natural, I think it's completely warranted. So going into the show, the thing I thought they really had to nail was the tone. That's the only way the show was ever gonna succeed. Obviously, the show had to be heavier than the cartoon that it was based on. The medium of live action just calls for it. You can't have as goofy of moments, characters getting hit by stuff for jokes, or cartoon sound effects, or people doing cartoony movements, but your subject matter is still a 100-year war that's been raging that had started with a genocide. So a darker tone is absolutely called for, and they did try to go for it, and I think what they tried to do was largely correct, or at least their efforts were pointed in the correct direction. Things are admittedly darker and slower in some ways, and I think, yes, it had to be. But unfortunately, the show was given the near impossible task of adapting a show that is beloved for being bright and fun to a show that is purposely less bright and fun and still try to be recognizable. They had to make the show darker to work, but you can't just turn it into a gritty reboot. That's not what anyone on the planet is looking for when it comes to Avatar. So we need to have these heavier moments for the subject matter, but we also need to have these lighter moments where our characters are still kids on an adventure to still keep it Avatar. Which is a tall fucking order, man. Like, we gotta be genuine in our critiquing of the show. This, from square one, was a pretty crazy undertaking. I said in the past that making this show great was possible, and I genuinely still do hold that opinion. But doing it was gonna be hard. This isn't an IP like Star Wars, where you have this vast universe where you have the benefit of doing whatever you want tonally. This is a very unique story with very unique and beloved characters, all of which you have to change majorly to even have the medium you're telling the story in to work. That is a psychotic game plan. To even have the guts to think of attempting such a thing is pretty wild. So I think you kinda have to give them some props for what they did accomplish. Listen guys, it's never a horrible cringe fest that leans too far into edginess or too far into childishness. It finds a middle ground where neither extreme is ever met. And while yes, that is a positive, it also makes the show feel confused to what it's trying to do sometimes. And sometimes even worse, like it doesn't even have its own identity. Like the show seems afraid to really lean into any one feeling. When it's dark, it makes sure to not go too dark. When it's fun and childish, it makes sure those moments are brief and quickly forgotten. Which means none of these moments really get time to sink in. If moments don't get time to breathe, they become forgettable. And I found in this show that happens a lot. More often, we're left sitting on scenes where characters exposit to each other on what's going on or what they're feeling blandly as they sit or stand around. Like the scene in episode 1 where Aang is talking to Appa, but really is just staring at the camera, telling the audience what his character is and what he's feeling, really worried me when I first watched it. Should Aang not instead, with tears in his eyes, be venting to Appa about how frustrated he is with the news that he's the Avatar? Showing me so some character, some emotion, rather than staring at me and telling me what it is. This happens a lot. Maybe not in such a front-facing, obvious way, but the writing of exposition definitely doesn't intermingle with the writing of anything else, which is what great exposition does. You do need exposition in the story, but having it being woven into learning about a character, or an event, or a location, or the world as a whole is what makes it feel natural. The Netflix adaptation almost never does this. So often, especially in the first few episodes, we have characters speak to each other and just say what their character is, what their motivation is, what something that needs to be explained is. Like, let's compare a scene from each show. Aang wants to go penguin sledding and jets off. After Katara catches up with him, she tells him she'll help him catch a penguin if Aang helps her learn waterbending. Aang says he doesn't know how to waterbend because he's an airbender, but there has to be some other waterbenders around to help her, right? Nope, Katara is the only waterbender in the whole South Pole. Aang then floats the idea of going to the North Pole to learn, but they quickly get sidetracked with penguin sledding and happen upon the grounded Fire Nation ship. Aang is amazed, and Katara mentions it was part of the Fire Nation's first attack, something Aang at this moment still has to learn about. Aang, being adventurous, steps towards the ship meaning to explore it, and Katara, being inexperienced, is very wary about going on the ship, but reluctantly joins it. Alright, lovely. What do we learn? A lot, actually. Aang is a fun-loving kid, loves to goof off, and is pretty confident as well. Katara, despite being inexperienced, is so driven to learn her craft, she asks a bender of a different element if he can teach her, leaving us to wonder if she's so inexperienced she doesn't know that's not how it works, which also very subtly teaches us that's not how it works, or if she's just so hungry to learn, she'll see if she can learn anything from anyone. We then get a fun little bit of world building. Something people do in this world is sled on the backs of these weird looking penguins. Cool, we don't do that in the real world, looks pretty fun. And then we learn in just a few lines that the Fire Nation was here a long time ago. Aang is brave, but probably naive, and Katara holds a lot of trepidation about exploring something that's been sitting not too far from her home her whole life. That's a lot. The first episodes of Avatar are filled to the brim with excellent character writing around excellent world building. Let's compare that scene to the equivalent scene in the live action show. Aang has just learned of the war through Gran reciting the first lines of the iconic cartoon intro. Katara joins him outside and explains their entire living situation, where their father is, Sokka's role in the village, that the Fire Nation attacked semi-recently, and that, hey, that boat over there that we've been meandering toward as we've walked was part of the Fire Nation's first attacks from a long time ago. Then we have a short scene of Zuko training, then cut back to Aang and Katara already being inside the ruined ship and Katara trying to waterbend. Katara then exposits some more about why she's the only waterbender and why Sokka doesn't want her doing it. Aang says honestly some crazy mumbo-jumbo you would never hear in the cartoon, and that helps Katara to actually do some waterbending. So we've learned all that Katara has exposited, about 6 separate things, making it feel rushed as hell, as well as setting up a bit of her frustrations with Sokka for later. And that's about it for her. We don't really learn about Katara much. We've learned that Aang is so good at bending, his advice actually transcends which element he's talking about and seems to be applicable to water as well, and that's it. We learn a lot about the setting and the goings-on, but almost nothing about our characters. The dialogue is so bland and designed to just get information across that we can't possibly glean anything about the people actually delivering the lines. And this problem is apparent through the entire show. So often Aang just stands there saying how he feels rather than being given something to do or expressing it in any way. And each scene that isn't just expository feels like it's only there so we can then raise questions to exposit about it in the next or a future scene. Even simple things that should be a line of dialogue at most seem to have to be whole conversations. Suki's whole thing in her episode, besides liking Sokka, is realizing she hates the feeling of being trapped on this island when there's a whole world out there. This could have been accomplished by her saying that Kyoshi Island stays out of the war to stay safe to Sokka early in the episode, and then at the end having her say she knows what she's missing out on now. But unfortunately, we have to have multiple conversations with her mother to say these things out loud so everyone can understand them. And I'm not hating on the Kyoshi episode as a whole. Some of the best storytelling in the whole show takes place there. I like the Sokka and Suki scenes. I think those are the exact kind of storytelling you need in this show. Characters with strong traits bouncing off of each other and not feeling like they have to say everything out loud. Learning about each other, and in turn, the audience learns about both of them. There isn't enough of that. Like, did anyone else groan out loud when they first heard Lieutenant G say, "But we're the 41st. It's like, bro, I know. I've been watching the show. The show just told me that. And you definitely know that. Why did you say that out loud? Like, a much more natural reaction would be that Lieutenant G just realizes what Zuko did for them silently, right? Like, if people are paying attention, they know what's going on. Like, the show seems to want to explain everything flatly and bluntly, even in situations like this where you don't need an explanation at all. For some of it, I can see why they do it, though. It seems like every episode, especially the mashup episodes where 3 or 4 episodes from the cartoon are all slammed crammed together into one. There are so many elements present in each story, they feel like they need to be explained, either to new viewers because they're not familiar with the source material, or to old viewers because they're afraid people will be confused why these characters who have never met are suddenly in the same story now. Like, hello, we're Teo and the Mechanist, and we're an Omashu, even though we weren't in the cartoon, and this is my workshop where I make all sorts of stuff for the city, and this is my son Teo. He's really into war for some reason, but oh wait, hold on. It's me, Jet, and I'm involved in this plot line too, and all the freedom fighters are present as well, and this is our whole dynamic and what we do, and hold on. Zuko's here too, actually, and here's the scene explaining why, even though, once again, he wasn't in the cartoon, because we have to explain mashing up the next episode with a bunch of different ones too, actually. I thought with cutting some episodes, we would really cut the fat and focus on important beats, maybe expand on them in new and interesting ways. But that isn't what they tried to do. They just tried to put as much recognizable shit in each episode as they could. And by putting so many together, there's even more fat than there ever was. And I think you could put together that from all of this show feels really, really rushed. Most things fly by at a breakneck pace. We lose a lot of interesting character dialogue because scenes don't last any longer than they need to explain why we're doing the next scene, or to introduce a new character, or to explicitly say what a character is feeling. Character beats can still be touched upon, but don't seem to ever go anywhere. There are a few scenes that I think are actually very good, because they take their time. Like, say, the Iroh captured on the road scene. I think that's one of the best scenes in the whole show, not because it's a close adaptation to the original, but just because it gets a second to feel like it's just a moment and real dialogue. Even though, yes, it's more exposition, it's centered around this character's emotions. It's executed like a real scene. This guy's pissed at Iroh for the siege of Ba Sing Se and for killing his brother, and we can tell that Iroh isn't ashamed of his actions. He was at war, but he isn't all that thrilled about the reality of the situation either. And like, look at this guy. This guy's killing it. I feel more of a connection to this guy than I do the main characters. I like the Boomy table scene for the same reason. It seems like the show slows down a little bit. We get to characterize Boomy and frame the world a little better. And no, it's not the same as the original show, but at least it's something. Scenes like when they arrive to the North Pole, for example, feel like they had fucking limited paper to write on. Like, not only does the Water Tribe inexplicably know that the Avatar is arriving, which is one of the silliest moments in the whole show, but Arnuk, the chief, is there to receive them. And not just that, allow me to introduce you to Paku, our foremost expert in waterbending, and Yue, my daughter, who is our spiritual leader. I know, yes. No, we already know about the Fire Nation who's coming to attack. Don't worry. Moving on. Like, what? Slow down, man. Holy shit. And I think the addition of Zuko's notebook is a really big part of why things seem so rushed too. Our characters don't feel like they have to learn about the world in any interesting way. They literally have a glossary they can check, and then exposit what is in it while T-posing, and then have an instant answer on what to do next. It's like a perfect design to be rushed. It's insane. And bringing it back around to the North is probably the worst culprit in being rushed. Somehow Sokka and Yue seem even more distant than the original show, despite the slightly increased runtime in the North, I think. Like, they probably spend more time together on screen, but man, they're just standing around talking to each other. At least in the cartoon, they hung out and seemed to hit it off. When they kissed for the first time, I was like, huh? What? And then suddenly, what the fuck was that, by the way? Zhao has a knife made from spirit metal that he got from Roku's shrine that used to be Kurik's that can kill spirits. What? What? That's explained over the course of like 90 seconds, and then Kurik inexplicably shows up to tell Aang about it, despite a rule being set up earlier that Aang can only talk to past avatars while in their shrine, just to be like, I can feel my knife is coming back, and there can only be one reason for that, which Aang should honestly be like, what? What the fuck are you talking about? Spirit knife? I gotta stop. I'll save that rant for the episode review. This show's rushed in a lot of ways. But okay, let's talk about the good for a second. This show isn't all bad, and I don't want this entire video to be me complaining, because that's not what this channel is. You can tell there's a lot of love put into this show. Love for the source material. It's there, you can feel it. Designs and moments and little references and lines that people won't even notice or remember are still present. And it's more than just fan service. You can tell that people who cared for the original show worked on this project. For the most part, I think the show looks pretty incredible. Set design, effects, and costuming are all pretty great if you ask me. The show can even capture a pretty impressive scale a lot of the time when it tries. Like, there's this shot in the Siege of the North where it's a one take, almost certainly all digital, but it's still pretty impressive and good looking. I can't believe this wasn't used in the promotional material. It's probably the best shot in the whole show. It's not all good. There are some shots that look significantly worse than others, but that's just gonna be reality with a show that relies so much on digital fuckery for its settings and magic. Set design, like I said, for the most part, also seems very good. Everything seems like it's a part of this world. I have no trouble believing that. What bothers me sometimes, though, is the blocking. Even though the sets feel real, it can feel a lot of the time that the characters are sort of stuck where they're standing. Like, if they were to go just a bit off screen in any direction, the world would stop being believable. So they're very still. Some performances performances like Dallas Liu as Zuko and Ian Owsley as Sokka are to me very solid. Zuko can feel like his lines are a little too whining sometimes, but other than that, I think good. Ian Owsley, despite being saddled with probably the hardest main character slot, does the best if you ask me. He feels appropriately Sokka in most, if not all moments, and never borders on being too wooden like a lot of the rest of the cast. And as long as we're talking about the cast, I gotta mention Zhao. Zhao is once again my favorite live-action Avatar character. He was my favorite in the M. Night adaptation too, weirdly. So many line deliveries in this show, and every character, even Zuko and Sokka, fall victim to this, have one of two weird qualities. One is that the actor seems to almost be rushing through the line, like they just want it to be out of their mouths and be done with, which is like, what is this, one of my YouTube videos? Haha, moving on. The other is that some lines have these weird performative qualities to them, like the character is saying it like they're in a play, so the people at the back of the room can really hear the way they said it. Iroh is the worst for the latter one. Ken Leung as Zhao has neither of these problems. Zhao feels alien in the show. He speaks like a real person. He feels like a little shithead, slick-talking huckster, and his line deliveries are appropriately understated and sarcastic when it's called for. Zhao feels more like a cartoon character than anyone else, but in a way that paradoxically makes him feel more human than the rest of the cast that can sometimes feel flat. And being a cartoon character in my reviews of Avatar is usually a bad thing, but this time it's the one thing I want. Can we have a little personality? Zhao's great. I love Zhao. But maybe just because the live-action version seems closer to the version I had always hoped for in the original cartoon. The Air Nomad genocide scenes, I think I liked. I never really had any desire to see them, but I think they set an appropriate tone of the show being darker, even though I'm not sure the show stuck to that tone very well to that level. But seeing Aang interact with Gyatso more was alright. Ozai and Azula being different was something I asked for, but I'm not really sure if I got what I wanted. Ozai seeming to like Zuko a lot more kind of defangs him, I feel like. Not only does he have tears in his eyes when he burns his son, he seemingly only banishes him to benefit Zuko, so that it can make him stronger. Like, there's a big difference between you're a fucking embarrassment, get the fuck out of my sight, here's an impossible task, go do it, you're never allowed back unless you do it, and you have far too much sympathy for the weak, you will leave and find the Avatar, and across this journey it will make you stronger. Only after capturing him are you allowed home. Ozai feels like less of an ominous, looming threat who went as far as to permanently scar and disfigure his own son with pride in his own actions and in his voice, and more like a ruthless battle commander who has strict expectations for his kids, and that feels much less interesting to me. And on the topic of Zuko's banishment, I think the addition of the soldiers he stuck up for, being his crew, is great. I think everyone loves that. Whoever thought of that, good job. Except that one line from Lieutenant G, cut that shit out. Azula, while being present in the show, really isn't used any more than she was in season 1 of the cartoon. We mostly get scenes of her lamenting the fact that her dad is praising Zuko's actions, and being upset, and trying to impress him. This, at the very least, sets up her rise and eventual fall into madness much better than the original show ever did, which is famously one of my biggest issues, so I can't say I'm displeased with it, but nearly every Azula scene is her training and being mad at her dad and Zuko. It's the same scene over and over. And if I'm being honest, I think everyone who heard Azula was gonna be in the first season of the show definitely envisioned her role being a lot more involved with the plot. And I agree, I find it disappointing that she wasn't. Also, it was really funny that every single Mai and Ty Lee scene was them just standing there watching her fight some dudes or shoot arrows. Like, why were they even there? Bending also, for the most part, looks pretty good. I don't know if anyone's gonna have any problems with air and fire bending, except maybe Zhao's fire whip at the end. That should look hilarious. But you've got to give props to Gordon Cormier and especially Dallas Liu, at the very least, with their athleticism in the action scenes. Some very impressive stuff being displayed just on a like, wow, you can do that with your actual human body kind of level. Water and earthbending might be a different story though. Earthbending looks by far the worst. Everything looks like an effect. Nothing looks photoreal, but earthbending looks the most like an effect. It's pretty clear why the best earthbending takes place in the very first scene, because in that scene the ground is very dark and wet, and that definitely makes the effects more palatable, because you can't really see them. Waterbending has a different issue. Despite looking pretty good, I feel like it never has enough force to really feel like it's doing anything. A combination between the animation not being snappy enough, or not enough water being moved, and the honestly extremely flaccid sound effects used for it. A lot of the time the waterbending sound effects sound like water rushing through a stream you'd have to take like a slightly bigger step than usual to walk over. You'd have to go, huh? And I get it, the water sound effects from the cartoon aren't actually sounds water makes when it's moving ever. We've just learned to associate the sounds with waterbending. And they want to make this show feel realistic. But it would have been better than having your magical attack that's knocking people over sound so weak. There's also an issue that I have that bending scenes just aren't very creative, and you can tell from the Paku Katara fight why that is. It's because if they try to get creative and visually appealing with them, they do not have the means to make it look good. So much of the bending is just, here's a roughly softball-sized projectile of my element, hiya! And when more creative moves are used, they are the moves that end the fight, so there's no creativity in dealing with them. Early on, when Kyoshi takes over Aang, another thing to say for the episode reviews, she uses waterbending to scoop up some downed Fire Nation soldiers, sort of in the same way that the OG show used surface tension. That was cool, it was an interesting use of it, but other than Katara using a similar move in a split-second shot when she fights Zuko, we never see water be used like that again. Otherwise, it's just weird limp splashes and some ice discs and spikes. Air falls into a similar trap where Aang just does a kung fu move and then there's big gust, very big gust. It's just not very interesting to look at, and that's before we get into the very liberal, heavily applied, double-decker slow motion this show uses. I get it, you want to highlight spectacle, but nearly every single fight scene has some slow motion in it. Slow motion should be used sparingly to really show your insane visuals, not to show the impact of someone hitting the ground. This isn't Power Rangers, man. If you keep using it, the fact that your action scenes just aren't very solid becomes very apparent, and that's honestly what it's used for, to hide the fact that your action isn't very good. Like, sure, you can have Zuko doing these incredibly athletic things during a fight, but it doesn't add up to much if half of your action is in slow motion. Like, the way they use it, it steals the dynamicness and impact of the shots. It doesn't enhance it. And you would really hope a lot of these action scenes would really be a highlight, considering a very large portion of your show is characters standing or sitting around in rooms and talking to each other. And that's where another big problem comes from, the talking to each other, the writing, and the line delivery. And before I get into talking about characters and acting, let me say something. I think if you take time out of your day to bully actors on the internet who are kids now and were even younger at the time of filming this, you are a fucking loser. Having your own opinions on things is good, whether they're positive or negative, but if you go out of your way to directly harass people you think didn't do well, you're way past the line. And I think you're an even bigger loser if you take in YouTube videos or other forms of review on a show that do such things and somehow feel galvanized to go do the same because someone else on the internet did it first. When talking about this show in this video and any other future video, it is never my intent to bring hate down on any actor, child, or adult. But I do think I need to take an extra second to say I'm only ever critiquing the show and never the person behind the character. Like I said, basically everyone in the show has one of the two problems I described earlier sometimes when delivering lines. Except for Zhao, my golden boy. Let's talk about Iroh because I already alluded to it earlier. Pa Sun-hyung Lee is a good actor. I've seen him be very good in other stuff before this, and I thought his casting as Iroh was pretty brilliant. And I still do, in a way, but I think his performance misses what makes Iroh great. Iroh is a warm and gentle and wise man who seems genuinely laid back. He's not performing or trying to be anything, that's just how he is. He's not the kind of person that would ever say something and then lean back and chuckle to himself. Like, he's chill, he has great vibes and much wisdom, but not because he's trying to be any of those things, he just is. And he's comfortable in his own skin, but for so much of Iroh's screen time in this adaptation, lines seem performed, like he's trying to be seen that way, like he's trying to be this wise old sage with a heart of gold, when the biggest charm of Iroh is that he wasn't trying, he just was. And that's probably a very hard thing to capture, especially when most of the fans have only ever watched the show once or twice, and only remember the broad strokes of his character. I can see the want to overdo these things, it makes sense in my head, but Iroh was a complete person. He wasn't just a good-natured guy who cracked jokes and had vague wisdoms. He had a little bit of indiscipline about him. He could be lazy or forgetful, he gambled, he shoplifted once when no one was looking, basically, and those moments help Iroh feel like he was more than just some wise old sage. He seemed like a guy you could really get along with. He wasn't some paragon. His whole character wasn't being Zuko's uncle. But here in this performance, we have no edge. Not that there was much of one to begin with, but truly nothing now. Iroh is one thing here, and that just seems to be Zuko's biggest fan. I must say, though, the Lu Ten funeral scene was a very nice addition. I like that a lot. It goes a long way to show he and Zuko's bond, since we don't get to see them in many different situations like we did in the cartoon. Now, the other much more present and noticeable issue with the line delivery is that everyone seems to be in a rush. Seriously, like, full syllables get slurred or swallowed probably at least on a couple lines per episode base. And that's coming from me, the master of slurring syllables. Most notably with Aang and Katara, some line deliveries feel wholly uncomfortable and like they're just trying to get the words out, and maybe even like they're embarrassed that the scene is focused on them, like as if the confidence just isn't there yet, which is fine, they're child actors, they'll get better, but this causes a lot of scenes to feel flat, and because of that, our characters don't feel like they have a lot of range to their disposition. A lot of lines are delivered with the same cadence, there's not a lot of emphasis on important words, so sometimes even the meanings of lines can catch you and you can be like, wait, what did you mean by that? And like I said, these are child actors, which means they will need extra directing. Each director signed off on each one of these takes and said, yes, that's the one we're going with. Any failure on a child actor's part, when they seem to have the chops like these guys do, is at least a failure of directing as well, if you ask me. And man, can you blame them with some of these dry-ass lines? Like, there's not a lot you can do with some of this writing.
She never wanted bitterness to fill my heart. That's how I know you've ended up on the wrong side. You're not fighting for anything you love, you're fighting because of hate.
How are you supposed to put a ton of character into just blurting out exposition and saying how your character feels out loud? I theorized the tone would be the make or break factor for this show, and I may have been tangentially correct, but what it really was the writing. I've already talked about how heavy it is in exposition and how rushed so many things seem to be, but even down to the character writing, things seem pretty shaky. Characters have changed, and that's not always a bad thing, but if you're going to change something, it can't just be because you want the story to be more economical and flow better, so you have to think about it less. These are beloved characters because of their wrinkles and their flaws and how they act, so changing how these characters present themselves and their motivations should be done with a lot of care, and at least for a few of them, it hasn't. There was this big discourse online shortly before the show came out because it was revealed they were toning down the sexist elements of Sokka's character, which was a lie. They removed them entirely, which is fine because the entire internet, including me, took the words toning down and read them as removing entirely anyway. So I guess, good job internet, we got one right finally. And the big issue with that was that it was a negative element to Sokka's character that he grew out of. The original show wasn't sexist, it showed Sokka why being sexist and his beliefs on women were stupid. That's anti-sexist. And removing a beat from a character that's supposed to start in this negative, small-minded place and grow into a character that everyone ends up loving is, I think, a fundamentally bad move. People make dumb arguments like, how are they gonna even find Aang if Sokka isn't sexist? Then how is Katara gonna reveal him when she gets mad? And like, no, you're missing the point. I don't want Sokka to start off as sexist for the plot, not even close, man. They could find Aang's iceberg in a million different ways and I'd be fine with it. I want Sokka to be sexist at the start so we can rise past it, like he did in the cartoon. Neutering characters so they're immediately more acceptable to the audience as a whole doesn't make for very good TV. It's like the showrunners were afraid if they made Sokka sexist that after the first episode and he said something stupid, they would be inundated by reviews of live-action Avatar is sexist, do not watch. Like, sure, you dodge the initial outrage by people that probably have Family Guy Funny Moments 37 on their other monitor as they watch, but you also remove the possibility of having a good message and a solid beat and a character arc. But it also seems like Sokka's character arc that we're used to has sort of been shelved for something else. We'll have to wait and see. The writing with character arcs and motivations extends to the rest of the cast as well. Let's talk about Zuko, since we haven't touched on him much yet. Zuko's overall motivations are pretty similar to the original show, but when looked at a little deeper, I think some elements have once again watered the story down. Zuko is no longer banished for refusing to fight his father in his Agni Kai. In fact, it looked like he was about to get the better of Ozai, which, like, wow, good villain, guys. Ozai was about to be blasted by a 13-year-old. Zuko is now banished for showing weakness and wanting to save the 41st, failing to strike his father in his Agni Kai, and then still doubling down on protecting the weak while he's healing. Ozai sees this compassion as a weakness and sends Zuko off to find the Avatar to harden him. Now, you could say the subtext is that Ozai still gave Zuko the impossible mission, whether it was to harden him or not, it doesn't matter. He was trying to get rid of Zuko for life. I disagree. I think the cartoon paints the relationship between Zuko and Ozai to be much more hate-filled, and Zuko's single-minded obsession with getting back there to be much more interesting. Ozai doesn't even seem to really dislike Zuko in this adaptation. Yes, an overbearing father, but not nearly as much as the cartoon. Plus, the scenes where Ozai seems impressed with Zuko's efforts, even if it is just to piss Azula off, disarms the tension between them even more. And finally, the Blue Spirit scenes basically write off whatever edge Zuko had to him. He suddenly has this calm conversation with Aang. Oh, just shooting the breeze. No, Zuko should want to fucking go back home, man. Why should he care for Aang to be humanized to him? Have a conversation. Even if they are stuck, Zuko's disarmed. He's got no fire. Let's do Katara and Sokka next. We'll save Aang for last. Sokka's biggest character beats were the fact that he was actually a disappointment to his father, or at least that's how he remembered it, and that actually his gifts may be more in engineering rather than fighting. Unfortunately, despite Ian Owsley probably doing the best job of the whole cast, he simply doesn't get enough to do. His story is extremely muddled. Nothing ever really gets a highlight. He's a disappointment. He's an engineer. He likes Suki. He likes Yue. There's no through line anywhere. It doesn't seem like his character has any sort of arc at all. You would think that it would be that he takes a leadership role in the North, maybe to play back on his father not believing in him, but no. He gets a small moment with Han where Han's like, can you tell us how firebenders fight or something, but that's as far as it goes. And I know what you're thinking. It's only season 1. His arc is only getting started. But I don't think so, man. Like, they needed this shit to be good. They're not greenlit yet as far as I know. Like, they needed big moments. They needed stories to work. They needed people to like this. But they have set things up for Sokka that haven't been paid off, and maybe they will pay them off in the future, if the future exists. But I think most of us were expecting bigger things for her. Katara at the least has some sort of arc, I suppose, but it seems very shallow. Her arc in the show is her confidence growing as her waterbending gets better, and that happens over the course of the first season. And while yes, Katara does get to be better at waterbending, her confidence seems to stay at the same base level the entire show. In the original show, Katara goes from this,
"But Sokka, I caught one!"
to this, And in the live action, Katara goes from this to this. Katara starts off as a character who was hungry to learn anything she can about bending. She leaves her home to find a master in the North. She gets better on her journey. And when she finally gets to the North Pole, she fights for her right to learn from a master, and then becomes truly great through her work ethic and determination. Katara starts as a character who seems frustrated that waterbending doesn't come naturally to her. She leaves her home because she can't go back because her friend the Avatar is being hunted. She gets better over the course of her journey, fights for her right to learn from a waterbending master, but then is deemed a master already, despite not seeming to do anything very impressive at all and never receiving any training whatsoever. Which one seems like a more fulfilling arc? And finally, Aang. I was against the outrage when they said they were changing his motivation. It didn't seem like a huge deal to me. Not as many side adventures made sense in my head. We can't have the gang be on a totally new adventure every 20 minutes with how the episodes are being set up. It seemed like an economical change to the way the show was being run. But the way they've reasoned out why Aang doesn't want to stop for adventures, that's where the problem lies. Aang's motivation in this show is twofold. His motivation from the Spirit World episodes from the original show, he wants to be taught this nebulous lesson on how to exactly be the Avatar, and he wants to get to the North Pole because Kyoshi, somehow having psychic abilities, don't know how that works, tells him that there will be a horrible attack that takes place there. Never mind the Water Tribe knew about the attack before he got there, but maybe Kyoshi also saw that Aang would have to become Koizilla for them to win, and maybe she just didn't decide to fill him in. Anyway, this means that Aang is noticeably not going to the Northern Water Tribe to find a waterbending teacher. He mentions it in one line when he gets there, but it really doesn't seem like it matters all that much to him. He is really only going there because of the psychic vision Kyoshi gave him, and that's why the trip has so few stops. Aang does not make any effort to learn waterbending in this show because it takes the entire show for Aang to sort of come to terms with being the Avatar, which strangely is the exact same way the M. Night adaptation played it, but he actively avoids learning waterbending in this one. Aang does not bend one molecule of water in season 1 unless you count him being in the Avatar state. Aang's story is so weird and mixed up in this shit, man, it's hard to even parse it. And for some reason at the end, it's tied up to be that Aang's whole journey was coming to terms with the fact that he is now in present day and he has to make the most of it. And that is the reason he doesn't want to learn waterbending, because he's only ever trained with the airbenders, and it makes him sad. But the problem with that is that Aang doesn't even run away. He flies off to think after he learns he's the Avatar and is caught up in the storm. It's literally not even his fault that he got frozen. He didn't even run away. It heavily seemed like he was gonna come back. Like, you do not get the feeling at all that he's leaving never to return. He didn't run away into the storm in an emotional outburst trying to actually run away from his responsibilities into horrible weather, not thinking. But over and over, characters yell at him for being a coward and running. He literally wasn't running though. He was just going for a moonlight ride. That is a big difference. If he did actually run, that would be something to feel guilty over. But he wasn't running. He was just a shitty bison pilot. But now a whole half of his arc is apparently dedicated to him reckoning with the fact that he's in present day. Like, it's treated like it's a bit of a moment for him to get over it. But it really only gets brought up a couple times, man. I think they did Aang the dirtiest of all. And the rest of what Aang gets to do is talk to his past lives, and they all tell him that being the Avatar is a one-man show, which he doesn't like at all. And then he gets this little moment where he tells Katara that her and Sokka can't fight because he can't lose them like he lost the Airbenders. And now he agrees with the past Avatars. Those feelings get sorted out in about 10 minutes and we move on. That's what Aang gets to do. I always figured Book 1 Water was named that because Aang learns how to waterbend. Anyone else ever get that vibe? And I know it's technically not called Book 1 Water here, but like, come on, bro. Now, I know I've been droning on and on forever, and a lot of it hasn't been pleasant. And you know, I think I'm a pretty positive guy when it all comes down to it. But I also really, really like Avatar The Last Airbender, and I'm gonna look at anything looking to recreate it with a pretty critical eye. And I am critical of this show. Is it the worst thing ever? No, not by a long shot. Some people say M. Night's adaptation was good in hindsight. Har har, guys. Yeah, good one. Does it ever crest into being more than just passable, though? That's the question on my mind. And I'm not sure where I sit with it on that level. I guess that's what the single episode reviews will be about, me reckoning what this show means to me. And maybe those videos won't turn out to be one episode per video. Maybe it'll be a couple episodes per video. We'll see. But yeah, just looking at the successes and failures and just analyzing with a finer tooth comb on an episode-to-episode level. Yes, I know I've been going on and on forever, but I will be talking about it more. It's in the name. Hopefully I can get more in depth on things I've mentioned in this video, as well as smaller talks I want to have as well. If that's something you're interested in seeing, like the video and subscribe. Also, if you really like the original cartoon, I've got just the fucking YouTube channel for you. Holy! It's me. I'm the YouTube channel. Patron shoutouts. If you want to see 2 brand new videos from me, you can support me on Patreon for just a few bucks. Link, as always, is in the description below the video. Biggest shoutouts of all go to my top patrons. A. Werner, who went to the spirit world and was the first physical being to become mayor of Spirit Chicago. There 50 Kobold, who survived a whirlpool by simply spinning in the other direction, canceling it out. Ian Byrne, who has a miniature ghost ship in a bottle. He had to create a ghost bottle to keep it from phasing through it, though. Justin Strong, who, just as we, Homo sapiens, eradicated the Neanderthals, he will destroy all of the Justin Weeks and the Justin Not So Strong songs. Laferg13, who invented the sport of javelin toss by hurling his lance at his opponent to win a joust back in 1603. The king was quoted in saying, "What the hell, that was sick." Luna Invicta, who jumped a jet ski down a ski jump and only died for like 25 minutes before being revived. Very impressive. Potato Scream, whose daydreams become their own branch universes, so make sure to stay out of index finger and thumb perspective head crushing range. Stephanie Riches, who found a box of kittens abandoned in an alley, and now, after a few years of expert marketing and content creation on social media, they all have 401ks. The former Meaning of Life, who has a WWE entrance every time they enter a new room. Just walking around the house is very loud and tiring. The 1 a.m. party, who was sadly struck by a bus and killed yesterday. However, they were then struck by another bus and were revived. Thomas Lautenbach, who had a cassowary toe grafted onto his foot just in case he needs to defend himself when his arms are tied behind his back. And Whitrow, who was sent a crown encrusted with jewels by a country no one has ever heard of. But King of Nothing sounds like a pretty sweet job if you ask me. And of course my other Fuck You Money patrons: Aurora, Balm Your Candle, Catch Adorable, Gene Cree, Omega Fighter, Sean Martin, Tater of Tots, Tiago Nascimento, and That Blind Ginger. And my god overanalyzers: Two Boots Are Beat, Ang, Alan Garvin, Andrew Watchert, Blacksmeme, Bob Deff, Chandler Crump, Kobe Smith, Connor Gallery, Dead Rat Fiasco, Deathly Healer, Dizzy Payne, Dr. Xerox, Dominic Saint, Donut, Emma, Aaron Grace, Flamio Hoffman, Gianluca Leandro Magi, I'm a Match, Jada Jones, Jackson, Jeremy Rubenstein, John Ajaka, Justin Scott, Kelly, Mac, Mackie Elisio, Mark Rethy, Medium D Speaks, Michael Fallon, Mighty Virus, Mr. Freest, Mystery Ghost, Nick, Nicholas Abbott, Peter Bayron, Reese, Rocket Mist, Ryan Gregorikos, Ryan Maxwell, Samuel Vanderplatt, Sergeant Carrot 69, Shane Antonacci, Sean Flowers, Spicy Ketchup, Super Snipper, The Long and Short of It, Thomas Dredgen, Thomas Graff, Victoria the Queen, and some sort of bear face. Next up, we really see what I can get away with.